Alright, so now we're going to go over add. So add and remove in this case will have 5 different scenarios. Fortunately, 3 of them are exactly the same. And the other 2, one of them makes sense, and the last one, the fifth one, will be new, although they're going to occur in a different order. This fifth one I'm talking about it will make sense as well. It's a consequence of having both a head and a tail. So public Boolean. So let's first do add, since that's the simplest to do. Public Boolean add item, and all this one is going to do is return false right now, and it will call the other add method, right? And when we write ourselves an add method, public void add int index item. So now when we add an item to a linked list, we will have 5 conditions, right? So let's just make sure we remember to do one thing at the end so I don't forget it, size plus plus, right? So we're going to want to add something and then increment the size when we get to the end. All right, so 5 conditions. So what are our 5 conditions going to be? Well, the first one is, as always, out of bounds. Okay? Right? Then we're going to list the other conditions here, and then we'll put them in the appropriate order. Right? We had what were the other 2 cases we had? It was scenario. What was it? That's right. It was adding a new head. Right? And the other scenario was any other case. Now, as I mentioned in previous videos, now because we're going to be tracking the tail, we're going to need to have a scenario for the tail where if we add a node to the last index, the tail is going to have to be updated, right? We add an item, right? We add an item. That item's going to be the last item. So we're going to have to update what the tail is, because the tail will have to now point to that item. And then there's just one other complication, right? And it's this one. So it doesn't complicate our scenarios anymore. And by the way, these 5 scenarios would be the same 5 you'd have to put in for a singly linked list if you're keeping track of the tail. And this one, I'll just go ahead and put it in the proper order, adding the very first item. Not like in the first location. I'm saying that the size of the list was 0, and now we've added 1 item to it. And the reason we need to do that is because, in the case because say we do that, well, let's go ahead and just draw that out. Delete these guys. Right, this is the node. I'm adding it to the linked list. We don't have a head or tail yet. So this needs to be both the head of the list, and so because it's the first item in the list, but it's also the tail of the list because it is also the last item in the list, right? So we need a way to catch both of those so it will behave appropriately. All right. So these are our 5 scenarios. We'll go ahead and we'll finish up this video by going ahead and writing the if statements for each of these, right? But these are the same. These are the 5 conditions. They are the same 5 conditions you will need to know that you will do for a circular linked list. Now with a circular linked list, it will vary a bit slightly, but otherwise, but these are the same conditions that you'll have to go through. Okay, and we have the same way of detecting these conditions. And for remove, these are also the very same conditions that we'll be doing for remove. For remove, we'll be checking to make sure that we're not removing something out of bounds. Then we'll check, is the item we're removing, is it the very last item in the list? Am I currently at a size 1 list? Am I removing a head, and now there needs going to be a new head? Am I removing the last item, the tail end of the list, which means that I have to update what the new tail is? And then removing anything else. Okay, so those are our cases. If index is, we know at this time, less than 0, or the index is greater than the size, then that's not a valid location to add it, right? And we'll go ahead and complete this one because it's easy enough to do. Throw new index out of bounds exception. All right. And obviously, in production, you'd want to put something a bit more professional than that. Okay, adding the very first item to the list. Okay, that means that basically, when would we? And I've mentioned before, what would the condition be when we're adding the very first item to the list? Like, well, that means it's at size 0. The size is currently 0, and we're adding the very first item to the list. So now size will be 1. Okay. Otherwise, and that's in that case, the head, that first node will be the head and the tail. Otherwise, we're adding a new head if index is equal to 0. That will be adding the new head to the list. Otherwise, what if we're adding a new tail to the list? Else if index, and what is the tail? Index equals the size. Right, adding on to the very end of the list. That's the last location I can add it to. And any other case else. So those are 4 cases. We'll work through them in the next video.